I'd say there are two things that I enjoyed about my student teaching experience. One, and most importantly, is just learning from my cooperative teacher. Seeing her teaching style, seeing how she interacts with the students, what her classroom management was like, and trying to build from that, learning from what I've gained in class to what she actually uses. The second thing, which is probably the most important thing above all, is just seeing the students learn. That experience that they gain, and those aha moments that they get that makes you really feel like why you want to be a teacher and what you want to get through to these kids. I think seeing that just motivates you more to want to learn and become a better teacher. I prepared for my student teaching experience by, one, substitute teaching. Being able to see what the classroom environment is going to be like with just myself in it, so I can anticipate what kind of things were going to go on. The other thing was just trying to organize myself so that I can learn as much as I can from my cooperating teacher. I can write down the resources that my teacher might use or that other teachers might use. Being able to reflect, which is the most important part, especially when you're a first-year teacher or second-year teacher, being able to look at, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and what things do I want to work on to improve, and how did this day go, what went wrong, what went right. I think what I would have done differently with my student teaching assignment or experience would be just collaborating more with other teachers. You have a whole school there, lots of experience, and I wish I could have talked more with other teachers about their teaching style, maybe thought of some ideas that were challenging for me and try to see what their solutions were or how they approached something. Being able to utilize an entire school, I think, is critical, and you can do that when you're teaching, but you're going to be more focused on what you can do and the teachers that you work with in your particular grade than being able to talk with an entire school. And another thing I would recommend that I did, but maybe some student teachers might not be able to do, is just observe other classes in the school, different grades. So for me, I got to see a kindergarten class, a third grade class, fifth grade class. I was student teaching for a sixth grade class. And just seeing how the teachers structure their classroom, their different routines, how they interact with the students, helped give me a bigger perspective on how I can teach my students. The most helpful thing during my student teaching experience was basically just applying what I've learned. I mean, the best thing about a student teaching experience is that it's a practice run. You get to try all these different things that you've been reading about, that you've been learning, that you've been collaborating with other teachers, including your cooperative teacher. And you get to see how the students react and respond. When you're teaching, you put a little bit more pressure on yourself because you have a job, you need to accomplish something. There are objectives that these students need to achieve. But when you're student teaching, you get to incorporate some things that maybe you wouldn't do right away. And you can see what the response is. And also, you get to learn more about what your teaching style is. You get to see what you're comfortable with. My college supervisor was a great support for my student teaching experience. There are a couple things that I gained from her. Number one was feedback. That's the most important part, because if you don't get any feedback, then you're going to have to evaluate yourself. You're going to have to figure out, okay, what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong? And the college supervisor already has that for you when they come in and evaluate you, and they can give you different points. And there were a few points that I really learned from that I didn't really have a perspective on. The other part is that a college supervisor can be a great liaison. As you're going to learn, they're going to be the representative between you and the school, and also between you and your cooperative teacher. And if you have a situation where maybe your cooperative teacher doesn't have the best relationship with you or is not providing everything that you need from them, then that's where your college supervisor can step in and be open about it, because they want to see you learn. They want to see you improve. So I had an experience that involved my cooperative teacher and my college supervisor where I gave my first lesson, and it didn't go exactly the way my cooperative teacher wanted it to go. And so, because it wasn't the way that she wanted to go, she interrupted me and said, why is Mr. Webb wrong? Or, no, you need to do this. And going through something like that is horrifying because you're all set and focused on what you're going to teach, and then all of a sudden you're wrong. And you're being evaluated by your college supervisor, you're being evaluated by your cooperative teacher, and it just throws a wrench in what you're doing. So I got through the lesson. Luckily, the objectives were achieved. The kids did learn, but it just didn't go exactly the way that I wanted it to. And so for me, I was very, very stressed, felt very sick to my stomach, and in that kind of situation, instead of just addressing it to the cooperative teacher right away, I talked to my college supervisor. And my college supervisor was very empathetic and said, yeah, that probably shouldn't have happened the way that it should have. And so we just discussed, what can we do from this point on? How can we be positive? What can we learn from the experience? And just talking with her was enough for me to get refocused. And from there on out, everything went fine. It went great. The kids loved me. My cooperative teacher worked great with me, and we didn't have any challenges. However, I still would anticipate that something like that would happen. So it was good. They can be very supportive, and you need to, when you have someone like that can collaborate with you and talk with you about whatever you're going through, then you got to take full advantage of it. From my experience, the advice I give to incoming student teachers would be adapt to your students. You may go through a lesson that you think is going to take an hour, but maybe your students pick it up in 20 minutes. And you're all set on doing this whole thing, and you can take an hour with it. But if you notice that your kids are responding to what you're teaching, then pick up the pace. Same goes for if they're not picking it up, then maybe you need to add more. Maybe you need to do some kind of intervention or some kind of additional instruction that helps them understand what you're teaching. You don't really come across that during your classes, understanding that, hey, everybody's at a different level. There are different learning strategies, and you should definitely use different strategies to teach, but seeing and identifying these kids while you're teaching or while you're instructing your lessons is really important to pick up and see where they're at. I think the most important thing, especially for me for my first lesson, is matching your assessment to your lesson, to your objectives. You can teach these kids about something in a certain way, and then if you give them an assessment that has nothing to do with how you taught them or doesn't really match up with the way that you taught them, they're not going to effectively learn. They're not going to be able to understand what you taught. And for me, at least, I've learned that you want to start with how you want to assess your students. And then you can determine how you want to instruct them. Another thing would be, just like you read with The First Days of School with Harry Wong, is discipline comes first. If you don't have your class's attention, if they're not focused and they're not working hard, then there's not going to be much you can do for them as far as trying to teach them and instruct them. So always keeping in mind that your students need to stay focused, that they need to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And what really helped me was having a talk with the students. Basically talk to them like they're adults and say, look, when you come into this room, the point of you coming in here is to learn. It's not about goofing off, talking about your favorite movie, your favorite show. He did this, she did that. It's about learning from your teacher, learning from each other, and trying to make the most of the time that you have, which is why you have routines and procedures so that you can get through and focus on what you want to teach these kids. And that's always going to be the challenge every single day. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell kids to focus, but at the end of the day, they learn something. They appreciate you because you show that you care and you want to see them learn.